Well, folks, welcome. Again, thanks for, I guess, can I say braving the cold yet? Is that part? But my name is Ryan Baggett. I'm a faculty member over in Homeland Security. Let's just do introductions real quick if there's a small group. So,
I'm Cynthia King, and I'm a professor in Health Service Administration.
good.
Dan Forel, I'm over in psychology.
Okay,
Socorro Zaragoza in Language, Cultures, and Humanities.
perfect.
I'm Jen Coslow in biology.
Awesome. And Jason is our tech guy and all around good guy, and so they'll be videoing this. Is this up on the TLL site, TLI site?
Yep.
Where it
we put
goes?
them all up there. Yep.
Perfect, perfect. Well, when they ask me, I'm a faculty innovator, so one of the things they ask is, do you have any unique or innovative techniques that you've used? Do you have anything you want to share with a group of faculty? And for several years, I've been doing some of these. Last year I did a PLC, so we did it over 4 weeks. We did something on team-based learning. It went really well. And those of you who, when you leave here and you're like, yeah, this is something I think I want to tackle, I'd be happy to put you in that Blackboard site or have you put in that Blackboard site. I don't know if we have access anymore to do it ourselves. But we'll get you put into that, and it's got everything that you might even want to know. So I've got all the resources I talk about in this presentation. I've given this presentation a couple times on a national level to Homeland Security conferences, but what I think you'll find is that it obviously is not a Homeland Security pedagogy. It's been used in several different disciplines, and it is one of the things that has excited me in the last few years with my teaching style. And it's hard. This is my 18th year here, 8 years on faculty, and trying to do something to energize yourself sometimes, it's tough. So when I can get excited about the same topics I've been teaching, this added a lot to it. So I want to lead you guys through this process. We'll do really informal, obviously. Try to keep it to that hour piece, and we'll just do a question and answer throughout. So just stop me if something doesn't make sense. We'll stop and we'll keep going. So I've got 4 objectives for today. Obviously, I want to explain this. I'm sure you think you have a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with, but there's a lot of details that I want to give you that we oftentimes we mistake group learning with team learning. It's like, oh, you're just playing on words a little bit. Well, there's a little bit of a difference there that we're going to explain that. There's 4 principles of it that I want to explain to you. We'll talk about benefits, and then I've just recently produced a journal article for one of our Homeland Security education journals, and I'm going to go over some of the findings. Over the three last years, we've been collecting attitudinal data from students, and this is used, and I'll explain how that was all put together. So that's what I want to go over today. You all probably have very similar, it's a horrible grainy picture, I'm sorry, but that's our student leadership of our student organization. But this was from one of the former secretaries of Homeland Security. So one lesson we have to take to heart is the importance of teamwork. If we're really to build a Homeland Security department and not a collection of individual components, we have to come together as a team and take full advantage of the tremendous assets, resources, and capabilities. That can go for every one of your disciplines. This isn't just a Homeland piece. But that is when I start talking to students about the need for this, that's what I lead off with. Within our program, we have several professional skill areas that we focus on, much I'm sure the same as you all do. Critical and creative thinking, interpersonal communication, social intelligence, teamwork is one of those. And within different classes, we focus on different attributes. This team-based learning class that I teach, this is where we focus on the teamwork piece of it. That's not to say they don't do teamwork. They do teamwork in a lot of different classes in our curriculum. But this is the course where we really get down to it and really explain this component of teamwork, and we'll get to that. Now, many of you have probably seen this. This isn't a new, this is actually from the 60s. This advanced topic I'm telling you about today from the 1960s. This cone of learning is from the 60s, not the pedagogy, not the methodology of team-based learning. So what you're going to see is, and we've all seen this, basically what we're dealing with is the active learning piece at the top. 90% of what we say and do, we learn through actually doing it, simulating the real experience, and most of active learning, which is a strategy within, falls within that category. So trying to get past the lecture-based piece of it. That's some things we struggle with as academicians, because obviously we're paid to come in and teach a subject, but trying to make sure that we're doing it in a way that students are engaged, trying to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's effective. Lecture will always be a component in education. I know that there's some that believe that it's a passing fad. Lecture, that is the essence of what we do. However, building other strategies around that lecture, that is the key to this. So we're trying to get past of just the incessant Charlie Brown, the womp type thing, and trying to build application into that. So the reason I like this so much is it gives you a blend of both. It keeps the class moving at a fast pace, and it keeps the students engaged. So active participation is very, very important. So how did this come about? Have any of you been to the Lilly Conference? Okay, Jason's been. The Lilly Conference, most of the time, did you go to Oxford?
No, I went to the one in Asheville.
Okay, so they're building out other places now. It used to be just Miami of Ohio University. They put this on. There's an international one. Obviously, they're building out to other places. It is the best teaching conference that I've ever been to. Used to, and I'm sure there's professional development money for this. Our dean would support several people going. This would be outside of your professional development, but talk to folks if you want to go to something like that. It is well worth it. It's a long weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type approach. Was that what yours was, Jason?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think they're kind of keeping it very consistent. 3 days of just things that'll make you think differently about what you're doing. Team-based learning was only a panel. It was one I just happened into, just by fate, I guess. So what happened was, that was in November of 2012. That was in the fall semester. Went up there with a couple colleagues, started splitting out sessions as you do at these academic conferences, and happened into a TBL. So I also had a new course I needed to develop for the spring semester. And I wasn't even thinking about trying to do something different. I was just going to do your normal lecture, midterm, final, away we go. Maybe a project if I was feeling pretty creative at the time. So when that happened, I attended the panel on TBL, and it was just one of those things that was like, I'm going to try it. It may be a complete train wreck. It may be biting off more than I can chew, but it was exciting the way that I could do it. Now, not every course is going to be suitable, and we'll talk through that, for team-based learning. Introductory level courses where you go a mile wide, an inch deep type approach, not good. This is obviously my personal opinion, but you have to be careful with freshmen and sophomores trying to pull something off like this. The maturity levels vary greatly. So we'll dig into that a little bit more. So I've been using it now, so this will be my 6th year in spring. It'll be the 6th year. I only do it once a year. I only do it for me in the spring, so you can do it in any semester you wanted to. I wouldn't advocate doing it in every class. It is a lot more administrative work for the faculty member, especially the first time. I've had one of my colleagues now retired said, wasn't real happy with you, Ryan, when I did it my first semester, but as it went on, obviously the benefits are immense, and we'll get to that at the very end of the presentation. Not only benefits for the faculty member, but the benefits for the student have been outstanding. So again, 6-7 years doing this, it's been pretty good. So how many of you, I went through this whole PLC last year, and finally on the last day, one of the other faculty members who'd been in there all 4 weeks said, well, I've been using team-based learning for a couple of years. I said, well, you didn't say anything the whole four weeks that we were doing this. So has anybody used team-based learning? No? Okay, good. I'm not good, but
I mean, maybe, I'm not
okay,
really
you
sure
don't know what it is
exactly
yet.
what it is
Okay,
yet,
very
so-
good.
I'm doing the capstone
Yes.
course, and we're doing that.
Okay.
But I'll ask questions.
Yeah,
later
no,
on because
please. I'll
it
explain
has,
more.
You know, the ups and downs. So.
Yeah, and there are some of both, and then there are other methodologies or pedagogies that are similar but not exactly. So we'll explain. This is a tried and true strategy. That's the reason that I was more comfortable with it. It wasn't a passing fad. This has been around for decades. and we'll go through some of the history of it here in a moment. It's numerous studies have been on it. The reliability of it has been proven over and over again. Healthcare has been huge in team-based learning. All of your disciplines, I'm sure, if you look it up, have been using this. So here's where we get into this, what it is, so you'll know a little bit more of you. And a lot of people have used aspects of it. What I'm going to encourage you to do is, that's great if you want to use as parts and pieces, but you will not get the full experience unless you take it as a package deal. And they warn in the literature, there's several books that I can give you references on. Most all of them, one book is just about the same, and they have some for disciplines. I think they have one for team-based learning and healthcare. So take the whole package, try to do it for a semester as an entire methodology, and then you can alter, because we've made alterations as we've gone along just to help us with regard to our curriculum. So before class, our goal is that a student will become familiar with the content, all right? That is the key. I think this goes along with our old QEP of critical thinking. It goes along with our current, most definitely goes along with our current QEP with critical reading. And there are tools of how these fit together with all these other panels that are going on. There are tools in critical reading that can be implemented in team-based learning to help the student be better at this. But in order to do this, what I have found is you got to have accountability. And there has to be some type of either assessment, some type of assignment to assess their ability to pre-read, to come to class prepared, and team-based learning has something built in. Now in class, tested on content in some way, and we're trying to determine where deficiencies exist. One of the deals is when a student really grasps a concept in the literature, we find ourselves, that's great, but then we teach about it anyway, and we spend a lot of time on it, when in fact there's areas that would be better spent by faculty of providing additional instruction. Our class periods are what they are, depending on whether you do 1 day a week or you do 2 or 3 days a week. It's a set time limit. So we're restricted in that manner, and we're restricted by attention span, just quite frankly, of what we're going to cover. So team-based learning, what I'll explain to you, has a way to determine where students are deficient so you can prepare for the next lecture based on those deficiencies, based on what they didn't understand. Instead of just doing the canned presentation over. That's why team-based learning requires a little bit more work in the front end, but again, the benefits are huge. Problem solving. That's another one of our core tenets in Homeland Security. When we get these students out here, much like your professions, they will be required to solve problems. That's their, in Homeland Security, it's pretty much all they'll do at times, it seems, depending on their role. So we want them to be able to implement critical thinking. We want them to be able to work with people in order to solve a real world problem. What I found is, and I'm sure you found this as well, you can have a really great student at 3.8, 3.9 grade point average, and they have a very difficult time working with other people. The thing I hear the most, because this question will come up and it always does, from the students, I give the students a very similar presentation on the first day, is I hate group work. I hate it. I always have to end up doing all the work and nobody else does, and they get the same grade as I do, and it's not fair. That is always the first thing, and it's usually from that student who is a very high scholastic achiever. The thing about team-based learning is it factors in peer assessments. And peer assessments have a way of straightening out the distribution of work. But you can't just expect this thing to happen magically. It's all going to be about the way your assignments are developed. It's all going to be about the way they're arranged. You can't have assignments that are easy to just distribute and work in silos and then try to push them back together. That's one of the tenets of team-based learning we'll go over as well. All right. The last thing, immediate and frequent feedback. That's why it's also difficult for faculty, especially this time of year. We're all thinking how many things, or I'm thinking, you guys may be on the ball, things I still need to grade right now, right? And it never ends. So team-based learning, you have to provide that feedback because these things are going to move so quickly and you're going to move on to the next project. The good thing is you're going to have to keep up. The bad thing is you're going to have to keep up, right? So when it's done, you move on to the next module that I'll explain. So the merits of the lecture, all right? We identify the content. The students might study the concepts if we're lucky. Beginning of the semester, we got more chance of that happening than towards the end of it. In class, the student may passively take notes. If I say to the students, I'm not sure why, students, you're not taking notes right now. And then they study for the notes for the final exam. They do a brain drain if they had anything to drain, and they dump it all and they move on. All right? Now, again, this is a very traditional model. I'm sure that there's classes that do well with the straight lecture. I teach classes straight lecture, but there's other assignments that need to be brought into it. Now, we talk about a team-based learning. I'm still going to identify the content. That doesn't change, right? The faculty member is still in control of the curriculum. I don't want anybody to think that the students are carte blanche, they can do whatever they want to, type of free-for-all type thing. I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to give the assignments. Now, say must. Must is a powerful word, I get that. But we use a concept called informal social control. And for college students this time, most of them respond fairly well to it, because if they don't study for the assessments that happen during every module, then their team is going to suffer. And when their team suffers, there becomes this area of encouragement, of letting people down. Basically, the team concept then occurs. And what happens then is the students know they need to study in order to help out their peers. And that goes a long way. It really does, especially with the junior, senior level course. We still test them, and then they solve project problems for their project. And again, I'll go over the format here in a moment that lets you see a normal team-based learning class. And then we have pre-class work, tests, team tests, and then reflections. I love reflections. And, you know, a discipline like Homeland Security hasn't always been about reflecting, but I've included now in every class, not just team-based learning. And a reflection is the ability for the student to make connections between the content, for them to help me understand that they understand the real-world applications of that content. So if I'm missing the mark, if I read these and I'm missing the mark, then I need to do something. I need to make sure that I go back and figure this out. It also helps them reflect on their team and what's going on. Obviously the reflections are just seen by me. I don't share those with others, so I understand who's doing what. They will be very forthcoming with information in the reflections. They'll tell me who is working, who's not working, what happened that week. So I'm able to determine kind of the dynamics of that team. We use an adult conflict model in team-based learning. I will never talk to an individual student about others on their team. If we have problems, I'll tell them first, they'll address it with their team without me, right, that you would do in a regular workforce. And if they can't solve that problem, then we'll do a mediation, and I'll sit with their entire team, and only their entire team, to work out any challenges that they're having. And that seems to be mediations, maybe one or two over the last 4 or 5 years. So mediations have been few and far between. They generally can work things out. And then we move forward, all right? These are a few of the texts, and again, I'll send out this presentation, and it'll be on the video. This is a gentleman by the name of Larry Michelson. He has been coined the founder of team-based learning, all right? This is the guy, used to be at University of Oklahoma. Now he's at the University of Central Missouri. You'll see a few of the texts there, but there are probably 15 others that are out there, and some very discipline specific. You'll see the first one, if any of you attended D. Fink's lectures when he came to campus a few years ago. Provost Vice brought him to campus. He's one of the co-authors, so it's a fairly small community using and publishing in this area with regard to these textbooks. And D. Fink actually ran, during one of his lectures when he came to EKU, he actually ran a team-based learning approach to his lectures. So there are a number of them out there. If you have any questions on that, feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to recommend. I've got several of them if you want to know which one are the best. All right, so this may look like a jumbled up mess. Let me explain to you, because it could be the most important part of understanding how this works, okay? So we've got two sections basically, and this is called a major instructional unit. Others could call it a module. Basically, and I'll show you 8 modules. I got 16 weeks in the course, in this course, and I've got 8 modules. So every module or major instructional unit is a 2-week period, okay? So the top part with the black background and the yellow writing, that's what's done in class during those 4 days. This is a Tuesday, Thursday. Now, I've had faculty colleagues that have done this 1 time a week. And it works just fine. You just split your class, your 2.5-hour class, in half, and you do day 1 and day 2 at the same time you do day 3 and day 4. That's the next one. So 1 time a week will work just like this. You could even do the 3 times the Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of schedule with this. You just have to shorten up and alter a little bit. So this is just the way I teach it as a Tuesday, Thursday, and I always have, so I've gotten comfortable with that. So in class, before we even get there, I'm going to give readings, okay? And just like you normally would do for anything else. I have an assignment I call a course preparation guide that they must complete and turn in for a grade. What this was based off the elements of thought, our old QEP. They go through a chapter and they identify the purpose, the question, the inferences, the concepts, the main information, those 8 elements of thought. You guys remember those probably. And that's the way they show me that they've read the chapter. They submit those individually. So that's getting them going. So that's before that class even starts. This is a Tuesday, Thursday. I have those due Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. My class is generally mid-morning on the 11 o'clock spot. So then they come to class, and they will come into, and they're assigned teams. They're assigned teams at the beginning of the semester. The way I do that, this is very important, the way I do that is they take an assessment. It's a 2-page assessment the first day of class. And again, on this Blackboard site, I share those out. It's a 2-pager. You can have anything you want on it. But I do things like I'll ask their GPA. I'll ask, most of them are my major, but I'll ask their major, minor certificates to do that. I'll ask, what activities do you do? I'll ask them, do you think you're an introvert or an extrovert? On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your technological abilities? And then I go into more detail. Are you good at PowerPoint? Are you good at video editing? Several areas like that, because some of my projects that we'll talk about, they're not just develop a paper and get up in front of class. We do some videos. We do some different things on PowerPoint to go from there. So you can ask any question you want to. This is about 2 pages. Then I set them all out, and here's what I try to do, and it works fairly well. Usually it's a 30-person, 35 on most semesters what it's turning into, but person class, student class. So I have 5 teams. I always have 5 teams because I'll show you the classroom that I use, and usually 6 to 7 people per team. You don't want to get too much bigger than that. The optimal in the literature is going to say anywhere from 5 to 7. So 5 to 7 people per team. I'll assign them teams. Unless something crazy happens, that is their team from here on out. Unless there's something that I don't know about that they didn't share with me, then that's going to be their team till the end of the semester. You're not getting out of it. But yes.
So do you put a mix of the introvert with the extrovert with different skills and?
That's exactly it. I'll look at GPAs too. So I'm not going to put a team. It'd be an interesting sociological experiment, but I haven't done that. I'm not going to put all the 2.3 students together and then the 3.9 students together. So I'm trying to mix them up a little bit. The other thing I'm not going to do is I've got a fairly good understanding. These are my students, and I've had them for 2 or 3 years. I know who her buddies are, and I'm not going to put known friends together. I'm trying to cut down on that. In fact, and of course, students are very unlikely to watch this video, so I can tell you all this. On that assessment, I put name your 3 closest friends in this class. They'll put it like, oh yeah, good, we'll be put together. I'm going to make sure they're not with those people that they put down there. And I always think that somebody's going to tell the next class, and it's never, they always feel like they've been duped, but it just is what it is. So I want to try my best to put people who don't know each other. I separate the ROTC cadets. I separate our student organization. There's little groupings that I have that I make sure that they're separated. So it's turned out very well, and it's drawn people closer together that you would never think that would be friends and close by the end of the semester. So that's a neat piece of
Do
it.
you get much of the, because I know you do it the very first week, and I experience in those first week or two, you get kind of the faders, you know, like they got the first day, they're registered,
Right.
and then you maybe see them 2 or 3 more times, and then it just kind of,
Yeah.
maybe rarely they show back up kind of thing. How do you deal
With the
that?
300 and 400 levels, I see less than that. That's
Okay.
why stay away from that 1 and 200 level. I see that all the time at 1 and 200
Yeah,
level,
right,
right?
right.
And you never know. But the 300 and 400, you might still have someone who fades. At the end of this, you're going to see a statistic that I give. The attendance rate in the team-based learning class is about 95%.
Okay.
My regular classes, they're probably about 80.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's about accountability, because if you attend all 4 days, everyone on the team attends all 4 days, I give that team a bonus. And that again is that informal social control that they feel like they're letting down their team if they don't show up. So the attendance rate's 95% in that class, sometimes even higher. It's rare that someone misses a team-based learning class. So it's pretty neat, the dynamics of it. And again, until you do it, you don't really see it, and you're like, this is outstanding. A lot of work, but it's outstanding. So they'll come in that day and they'll sit with their teams. I'll show you what a classroom looks like that I use for that. Basically, you could use it in here, anywhere where you put teams together. And the first thing they're going to do, I'm going to give them an individual test. There's fancy names for these in the literature for team-based learning. They call them readiness assessment tests or individual readiness assessment tests. Basically, it's an individual test. They're also going to show you in some of the literature, they've got these fancy answering forms that give you immediate feedback. He's got it trademarked, so I've never used them. I use pen and paper. And so if you see something about that literature, what they're talking about, basically it's a predetermined answer grid, and you set your test for that answer, and they do scratch offs. And I guess that'd be a lot of fun, but it's not worth the cost or the time for me. No offense to anyone who uses them, because I think somebody in my PLC was using them, and they had them in the break room.
and does that. a lot.
Yeah. So it's great if you have access to them and you want to do that. The students would probably find it, they'd probably really like that. It add more excitement. Basically, it determines the number of scratches that you get, and so you can determine how many times they scratched off, and your grade lowers and lowers each time or something like that. So it's probably pretty neat. So then they turn in the individual tests. I grade those, and they put them, each team has a binder, and that's our communication mechanism. Every time I come into class, I put the colored binders on that color of team. And I don't go through this big name your team, and I've got the red team, the green team, the yellow team. It's very straightforward. And it's just team 1 is always going to be orange, team 2, because in my head, I know in that seating that's where that color team is. So you don't have to trivialize this, and you don't have to do a bunch of customization to this. Set your pattern and then use that to go forward, because that's not the importance of this methodology. But I've heard people get wrapped around the axle a little bit with that kind of stuff. They'll put all those away. Then they're going to take a team test. The team test, all 6 of their members will focus on one test, all of their knowledge. So what's the purpose? Well, if things work the way they should, the individual test score should be lower, or at least equal to the team test. The team test should be higher. Odds are you got 6 people, everybody knows a little bit more. What we find interesting is you'll always have that team that somebody has outscored the team. And you say, how did that happen? Did you participate? So it becomes a teachable moment. Well, for whatever reason, they didn't listen to that person, or they pushed them out of the way and they didn't use a teamwork approach, or an alpha personality took over and wrote down the answers. Well, then we get to this point of making sure that you're respectful of everyone's opinions, and together you're going to make a better team score. It happens every semester. It's usually on the first one. It's like clockwork to be able to have that teachable moment with these students to say, you didn't participate fully. You didn't get everyone engaged. So they do that. We do an assessment. We trade up, do an assessment of those teams. I give a bonus. I give a lot. I don't give extra credit bonuses in my other classes. This one is full of it. It's incentive, small, 1 point here, 2 point here type things. The team that has the highest score on the assessment, they get a bonus. So there's a little bit more incentive to do that. So it's very competitive. So I'll say, all right, who got a perfect score? And then if a team did get a perfect score, let's say 3 teams did, then I'll average their individual tests, and the individual test average I'll give points to. So it's just little fun things. You can work out as much or as little of those types of things as you want to, and those come over time that you'll find ways to make it more competitive, a better application of the knowledge, those types. The last thing on that day, if a team believes that they answered the question correctly, but I have a different answer, they can do an appeal. And an appeal has to be turned in before the next class period, so before the Thursday, in writing, and they have to cite evidence from the reading of why they believe their answer is correct. So one of the things I do is I will put 2 on the first assessment a little bit close to see if the teams will take the bait. And what this does is it rallies them together. It has a unifying effect. And when they produce that, and I say, we had an appeal, and I gave them credit. They questioned it, and I think that you're right. I think both answers could have been correct, and I'm going to give you the points for doing that. That's a win. That's bringing them closer together, and it starts that teamwork thing going off. So little things like that. So I grade them. The class is over, I grade them. I determine the questions that have the most incorrect answers. That day 2 up there, corrective instruction, that's where I'm going to focus mostly on the things that they missed. Again, oftentimes we get stuck in this rut that we're going to just teach everything, which is okay at times for reinforcement and things, but I want to make sure that I'm really focused on things that the majority of the class don't understand. So day 2, I'm going corrective instruction, and I'm going to focus on what they missed on that first day. I will also give the project topic. I'll give the details of the project topic on day 2. Now, the weekend occurs. The good teams will start working on that project. They'll meet outside of class. They'll do whatever they have to. The first week, the first MIU, they don't think they have to do that. Then they decide we should have used the weekend more effectively. They get into technology more than I've ever used. The GroupMe app, if your students are familiar with that. There are a lot of applications now on these smartphones that'll help them determine when they're going to meet. It'll help them share files. I've in the past set up the Blackboard piece. You can do the teams in Blackboard. I'm hoping with this new Blackboard SaaS piece, this Collaborate piece they've got on there is new, that it'll be better, but we'll see.
Well, the university actually over the summer also joined Google's G Suites.
Yes.
So, and everybody with the EKU email now
They can file share with
and,
that.
and they have calendars in there, and
Right.
So I believe it's
Google
up there.
Hangouts is part of that.
Google Hangouts, and
Right.
They even have Classroom, though I don't know how applicable that is for what
Right.
we're doing. But
To be able to do some distance type things.
But I mean, as far as the collaboration and the fact that their hard drive space is unlimited when they're under that,
Yeah,
makes it,
it's good stuff.
Yeah.
And they usually come up with things that I had not even heard of to do it. So, yeah, it's great to see that. It teaches me. And that's one of the best things is every semester I learn something new from my students that you all probably do as well. And that's one of the pieces that they're always up on the technology to go forward. So that first Tuesday of the second week, that is a teamwork period. That is theirs. So it'd be easy just to go to your office or something and just not do anything on. This is where we go, and my last slide of this talks about you've heard of the whole sage on the stage thing to the mentor in the middle approach. This is the mentor in the middle. This is where you're going to be with them. You're going to be walking around. In our building, we have a lot of different space. I'm sure you all do as well, or you can go to the library or whatever. I keep them close. They have to stay in the building, but they don't have to stay in the classroom. And I make them use that time. And that's the time that they use to do the bulk of that work. So some projects you could probably get it done, or the majority of it done or completed that. Some other ones will require outside work. But I walk around and I sit with them and I say, now tell me what you're doing. Tell me the approach. And then we talk through the issues that they're having. So that's been good. They finalized it before that Tuesday and Thursday is show and tell. That's when they're going to come to class and they're going to show what they've done, and they're going to report out on teams. After that's done, they do a reflection for every module about how it went. Content and teamwork. They're about 2 to 3 pages, and they reflect on that, and guess what? They move and they do it again. And we do this, it depends on, the problem is, in the spring we always deal with snow. And we always have to be a little bit flexible, so most of the time we end up doing 7 MIUs. It'd be great to do the full 8, but generally speaking, last year was pretty good, but the years before we've missed, weeks, and it was very difficult to get that in.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
So on the reflection, so you would give them a reflection and a reading assignment that they would be due at the next class.
Correct.
So you can keep them moving
We
and not
keep
have.
keep rolling.
And also, do you have a time limit? Because you say you have like 5 teams of 6 typically.
Yes.
And your class is about an hour and 15 minutes,
It
from
is.
what I understand.
Yep.
So how do you do the time, and how do you? Is there a minimum time frame?
It depends on the assignment. So for example, a couple of the projects are actually videos, and when this first started 5 or 6 years ago, this was like an insurmountable task. They had to go to the Combs building and check out a camera. Now everybody's got a camera in their pocket, and iPhones and Droids and all those good things. They shoot their own videos. They use the Movie Maker and iMovie. So I generally set 7 to 10 minutes on most of those. One of the projects, the product is a 1-slide PowerPoint slide. We get the death by PowerPoint thing is such an epidemic now that it's just like scoop your eyeballs out boredom to watch those things. So one of the things, the product is 1 slide that they all have to talk off of, and trying to make sure that they can do that. So yeah, between 7 and 10 minutes is generally.
And do you have a grading rubric that they?
Every single assignment. Every single assignment has a guidelines document, and everyone has a rubric attached to it. Most definitely, that's the way to go. I'm not going to go too much time on this. This is my class, and it may not mean much to you, but you'll see this is how I get through those 7 MIUs. All right, you have to have a class that you can kind of chunk together. If you're going to be covering a lot of different things, this may not be your best methodology to go forth. But if you have something that you can group concepts together into about 6 or 7 or 8 kind of chunks or modules, this is the way to go. You'll see that there's 2 sets of peer assessments, one right before spring break and one at the end of class. Those are pretty heavy. They're 50 points. The whole class, I think, 750 or something like that. So those are pretty heavy. There's a classroom, much like many of your all's classrooms. It's nothing fancy. A couple things to point out, though. It's a grouping of tables that we put them through. There's 8 seats at each table, so we got plenty of room for that. There's the different colors of each one, and each one of them has a different colored binder. And I bring a tote, I put them in there at the end of it, I bring them out at the beginning, and that's how I communicate. All their graded information, any individual stuff, I staple them so the others can't see their grade, write their name on the outside of it, and then they hand them out at the beginning, so that becomes theirs. So there's no issues with that. But all the team stuff gets hole punched directly in the binder, and it builds throughout the semester. And at the end of the semester, you have that whole binder that they can go and look at. They know their grades at all time. There's contact information that they put in there for themselves. Of Of course, it's all on their phones now. Writing things down is so 2000s. But yeah, so that's the classroom. We went through some of this, so I'm going to breeze through because I can't believe I've already talked for 45 minutes. But this is kind of giving you another look. It's the same exact thing. It just gets rid of some of the noise. The day one is the testing piece of it, and you'll see these are actual pictures, not that one, but these are actual I'm sorry, you can't see my latest one. The first one is an actual picture. The third and the fourth one are actual pictures from my classes. So you'll see the individual piece, the corrective instruction on the second day. So that'd be Tuesday, Thursday. You move to the next week, the problem solving on day 3, and then the findings and the presentation on day 4. Now, we're looking at Bloom's taxonomy, whether you go revised or not. So if you're just in those first couple of steps of Bloom's, the learn and remember steps, this is probably not the methodology. This is probably not what you want to do. This is for a higher level, application-centered class, actually going to be doing things, solving problems, those types of things. I've known faculty in the past that do not want to be challenged, which blows my mind, but it is what it is, I guess. I encourage students in this methodology, in all my classes, but in this one specifically, to challenge every answer. Challenge it, explain to me why you think you're correct, and that helps them build up that piece of it, but some faculty have problems with that. And it does take some time, especially in that first semester. I wouldn't be trying to do 100 other publications and things. You need to have some time to get it all set up and going from there. So that's just a few pieces. So I've already talked through a lot of this, so I'm going to zip through a little bit and leave time for questions, but we'll go through these each one. So I told you about the assessment, right? That's how I determine my group formation, my teams, right? And they're not getting out of those teams, I've told you that. Large enough to maximize the resource, 5 to 7 members of each one of that. Large enough for full participation, that works as well. You could do 3 teams. If you have a class of 15 to 20 folks, just do 3 teams. Don't try to spread them out for that. On the first week, I do something that a lot of folks don't do with the do team type things. I explain why teamwork is important, and I have a whole lecture on the 4 phases of team development. And it helps me push them through. So you may be familiar with something similar, but the storming all the way to the norming to the performing, you've all seen that. I think it was Tuckerman who produced that a long time ago. And there's other things like that as well. So I explain to them it's going to start off rocky for you. Most teams are not just gelling on the first day, but it's great to see the progression of students into a team as the semester rolls on. So we talk about that. Also do an extra credit assignment if you see them with the straws, stacking them there. We do the tallest tower with straws. You've already seen that one. I do another one. It's a modeling and simulation team activity. So I spend an entire class letting them do team building. And that's at the beginning, the very beginning. They're getting to know each other. They want to feel like they're accomplished. They're getting to start to understand personalities. Has nothing to do with Homeland Security. It's all about team building. We have fun. They love it. One of the assignments, they're running up and down the halls to get some things, and it's just a great experience for the students. They don't generally do things like that in a classroom, and so we get through some of that as well. All right. So the second thing is accountability. We talked about this a little bit. The pre-class thing becomes a little bit different because it's not their grade only that they're going to alter. If they do what they're supposed to before classes start, they're going to help their teammates. They're going to help their peers. And that seems to, for a lot, not all students, some students, they're just not going to care. But most students, at the 300 and 400 level, are going to care about that. They're going to do the work that they need to. So there's a contribution to the team piece that's important. The peer assessments are obviously not shared out. One semester I made the mistake. They were anonymous, but I gave the students all the comments about them that were given by their teammates. It was the first time I ever taught team-based learning, and it was not a good thing. It caused a little bit of a grudgingly, it didn't go well. So I've not done that since. I asked them to give me comments about their teammates, but I keep those private. So yeah, learn from my mistakes from that. So it was very interesting. I thought they might want to know, and I'm sure they did, but it was bad. So the group assignments, again, it's going to be discipline specific, but it can't be just something like, well, here's this group assignment, team assignment. It's got 6 parts. Go out and tackle it. It has to be more detailed than that. It has to be something that people must work together in order to effectively accomplish the goals. So you'll just have to work through that. It has to be something that the folks, the whole free rider approach, the students have a hard time with that because other classes they've been able to do nothing on teams, certain students. So you have to make sure that they're getting engaged, and that's where walking around for that mentor piece, that's where that helps. I'll say, now what are you doing on this assignment? And help work through that. As you get in the semester, later in the semester, that becomes better. They start to become more integral role into it. So it's good stuff. The feedback, that was the other thing. So the rate assurance test, that's going to give them immediate feedback. I'm going to grade those projects hopefully before the next MIU starts, so that they know what they can do to improve upon the next MIU. It's tough. It takes time. It takes grading on the weekends, I'm sure you all do. I can't imagine anybody that doesn't have to do that. If you don't have to do that, let me know how it works. So, yeah, it's just the way it works. So, from that. Now, there's a lot of advantages. All right, I'm going to close with this and then share some data from the research. But the interpersonal skills are huge. In an era where we're texting and doing all those things as students, the ability to have to talk in interpersonal communications like we're doing today is immense. Being able to do that. Problem solving, motivation to attend, all that good stuff. In short, it has been the most enjoyable method that I've used. I still get to teach. That's important to me. I still get to work with college students, which is important, but also get to share lessons outside the content. Content's very important, and I think this way I'm able to cover more content than I would have before in deeper levels of content. And the students agree with that, and I'll show it to you in a second. Again, attendance rate, 95% pieces. There are 2 different courses. We do an Intel course in team-based learning, and we do this risk analysis course that I teach. The idea evaluations are higher than any other courses I teach. Now, if they would have done those idea evaluations at midterm, they probably won't be quite as high. When they're able to get through the entire process to that performing level with teams, they are appreciative of it much more than they were at the beginning. Students groan and moan, and it's at the beginning of it. By the end of it, they're like, this was really cool. This really taught me a lot about the subject as well as working with people, which I think is outstanding. This is the journal article we just pushed forward. Working with a junior faculty member on that, talking about the perceptions in the Homeland Security classroom. But again, it's the same as any other classroom. So we did this for 3 years. We started in 2015. It's anonymous. The students don't put their name on it. It's professor initiated, so it's the last day of class. I hand out this evaluation, front and back. 23 Likert questions. It's based off previous research in another discipline, and then we added 3 open-ended questions just because we had the need to know. Let's see, 2 classes. So we have looked at 194 responses. Now those could be the same student taking it twice, taking one class and then another one, but in total we had 194 responses. So very possible those aren't 194 unique students going that. So obviously these are going to be my higher ones that I'm sharing with you, but the agrees and strongly agrees. Helped me increase my understanding of the course material, 85%. Solving problems in a group is an effective way to learn, 87%. Improve my understanding of the concepts. Collaborating with my peers it's a necessary student trait. I've learned more in this TBL course as opposed to if it was taught in a non-TBL course, 88%. the enjoyment and is one thing, but the effectiveness is unequal to anything I've done with regard to straight lecture. Even my lecture courses, I do projects, I do little group work things here and there. This has been an excellent experience. Again, sage on the stage to mentor in the middle type of approach, and it does take time, but it's been a great experience. So, what questions do you all have, or things that I can help you with? Yeah.
To what extent do you think it's important that the entire course be designed as a team-based approach?
Yeah, I think you could probably split it. You might be able to do something in the beginning, and then to the last part, it'd be done. The problem is, right when you start to get into a pattern, the course will be over if you try to split it. What I find is teams need that 16 weeks to get through this project phases of a team development. So if you only did it for 2 or 3 weeks, or half the semester rather, 8 weeks, they really wouldn't have the chance to get to understand how their team is supposed to work. It would be another group work project. So that's the only thing. I have this semester, one of this 8-week term, I have a faculty member who just retired, who's teaching for us online, is trying this on an online 8-week. I think it'll be very difficult. I'm sure he will find that out, but we'll see at the end of it. Of course we have the online campus as well, and I've never tried this. I teach this class online and I don't try it with that. So we'll see. Hopefully he has some luck in it.
Do you automate any of it, like at the beginning of the, I'm thinking some of the assessments, that individual assessments and things, or are they more free form? I'm just thinking like going through Blackboard and having quizzes or something to kind of quickly tabulate so you're not spending so much time necessarily.
I usually, since most of those individual assessments like that are, a lot of them are multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank. I do have a grad assistant. A lot of times we'll go through and do that, and then I look at the results from that. That's what those scratch off things, that would be the advantage of using something like that.
Yeah.
It would be less. The problem, unless you met in a computer lab or something, or everybody had a device, then you'd have to work with that, because you want to do the team right. I mean, we literally put those things in the binder, and then they have 10 minutes. I put countdowns. They have 10 minutes to take the individual assessment. They get done with that, and then I put another 10 minutes up, and they go into team. And it's literally, we probably have a minute in between the two that we do that. But it'd be very helpful to have some type of automated. Yeah.
How do you handle the students that, require time and a half or whatever to take exams in this type of approach?
I develop my assessments that by most, they're simple. They should be done in about 5 minutes. So I tell those students before class, because I have several of those students, that if you ever need that, I've never stopped a student from taking an assessment. Even if we went over another 30 minutes, I'll just buy time and act like I'm doing something else and give them a little bit more time. But generally, I develop them with about 5-minute assessments, and then they have the 10-minute. So we're looking at most assessments. These are 15-point assessments, so 10 questions, 10 to 12. So they're usually able to do it. They haven't come an issue so far.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
Do the students, for the presentations, every module has its own topic and presentation, or are they building up to a final presentation?
So in my risk analysis course, it was all individual. In the intelligence course, Dr. Collier, who was using that strategy, he would build up. So you can do it both ways. He would have each one module built into a final project presentation, and he didn't do the teamwork piece on the front end, so he would end a couple weeks early, and then the last 2 weeks were all team presentations, big team presentations. So there's alternative ways to go about that. There's little things that you can do to customize this to make it work better for you. What would happen is, we started this whole thing, well, everybody on the team has to talk. You got to get up there and everybody has to talk. When you're doing this 7 to 10 minute presentation, it gets really disjointed. So then Dr. Collier started with this, one person will speak from your team, and it cannot be the same person more than once. And I'm going to randomly choose which person from your team briefs this. So here's what that does. Everybody has to be prepared to present. They all know the content, but they're not sure who's going to get selected. Little things that you can do depending on your the enjoyment level you want to have, the work level, the issues that you're experiencing. If you have, then you can do things to do it. And I think that's a great part of it. You don't have to be a stickler for every detail, but the general framework, it works if you follow throughout, and then just make tweaks as you need to. And it gets better after year after year after year. You feel more comfortable with it. You do things a little more a little more extreme on different things. Just see how they'll work out, and say, I won't do that again. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I've been doing photo journals
Mhm.
for my class, and every team needs to pick a photo that represent whatever topic
Yeah.
we're discussing. So it has been really really good
think
because
it's
they
great.
have the image of the picture, and then they have to expand on the relevance of the picture and
Yeah.
why they pick
See,
the picture.
it's great. And every discipline's different, and that's, you got to find what your thing is and what's best for your students, and make sure that you're following that path. So I think it's great. All right, folks, I think we're right about time. 1 minute over. I appreciate you guys coming out. If you've got my name, you can email me if you need
Could you
anything.
send us that presentation?
I will send the presentation and
I
just
need
follow
to
it up
sign
with any
in.
questions. Yeah, sign in. Make sure you do that.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
All right.